According to Governor Murphy's budget proposal, the State Disability Benefits Fund will be nearly $500 million in debt by the end of the coming fiscal year. How much of an increase in regressive employee wage taxes is going to be needed in the coming calendar year to offset this deficit?
I'll have to get back to you with the specific numbers, but one that might be in your OLS question schedules. But just to be clear, as I mentioned to the earlier question, I believe you weren't here yet or out of the room, but this is something that was a result of the the statutory quirk of the expansion that happened in 2019, combined with a bigger quirk of COVID, of the usage of the temporary disability and family leave trust funds during those years. And we're looking forward to working with this body on having a legislative fix to standardize and stabilize what those contributions will be going forward. So as I said earlier, we know employers don't want to be on a roller coaster. Last year, the rate was 0 for some of our funds, which is not sustainable, obviously. But clearly, we're doing everything that we can under the statute to make sure that the fund is stable, number one, and two, that it could be more predictable going forward for employers.
I'm glad that you brought up the fact that last year the rate was in fact 0, because I want to get to that in a second. Because based on answers to OLS questions that were received just yesterday, the increase looks to be $1 billion, and obviously this is a tax that is very regressive, not on the employer, but it goes to the pockets of the hardworking New Jerseyans, the employees.
All this is set by statute. We don't have flexibility in setting the rates. Whatever the statute says we are going to do, we are going to do.
Based on the comment I'm about to make, some may call me a cynic or a skeptic, but last year was an election year, and the rate was 0. Then all of a sudden this year, we have an additional $1 billion of a regressive tax that's going to be passed on to the employers. Is that a coincidence?
Actually, isn't it to the employees?
That's what I'm saying, to the employees. It goes into the employees.
Employers.
I'm sorry. It goes into the pockets of the employees.
I listen to every word you say.
Please teach my friends and family that.
I agree with you. This is a big question. This is $1 billion tax on employees.
I did say employees the first time, right?
Senator, I listen to every word you say. Don't worry. To pick your original question, though, about election year, that has absolutely nothing to do with how our rates are determined. Quite frankly, our staff that determines these rates in both our Office of Research and Information as well as our Office of Finance and Accounting are longtime civil servant employees who have big algorithms and data spreadsheets to put these numbers together. They are not affected by political issues. But as I said before, it was unusual, for sure, to have it. We had 2 years where we had to project it one way, as opposed to all the years prior to that and all the years after that, because of the 2019 legislation. And that combined, as is so greatly laid out in the OLS question itself, if you look at that preamble to that question, it gives a full history of why we are in this situation. It has nothing to do with election year politics. I don't think OLS is involved in elections.
And again, we're still facing the residual effects. In every single hearing, I think this is a bipartisan issue. Every single hearing, we're still dealing with the residual effects of COVID, getting employees back into buildings, working each and every day. As Chairman Sarlo has said multiple times, he deals with employees who are engineers that want to work remotely, and he's saying, you're building a bridge, you can't work remotely, you have to be in the field. And yet, this year, when we're desperately trying to get more and more people back to work, this $1 billion is passed on, as I said earlier, maybe incorrectly, but it passed on to the pockets of the employees. This isn't employers. So, I mean, this is a really serious regressive tax. And it also, $1 billion, I know, doesn't sound like a lot of money anymore when we have a $56 billion budget, but $1 billion is a lot of money to the 9 million plus New Jerseyans who are working, or, many of them are working very hard. So can you guarantee that there will be enough money in the State Disability Benefits Fund so that all eligible claimants will receive the benefits they are entitled to in the coming fiscal year?
Yes.
How so?
I mean, that's what I'll put it this way. I will guarantee that the contributions that come in that are set by statute will be enforced. I will make sure that employers and employees are paying into the fund as determined by statute. That's what we do in our department to make sure that we're following the law. And real quick, it's 4.4 million workers.
4.4 million employees. I was speaking of the amount of citizens that we have, obviously not just the people working. But. So Governor Murphy's budget proposal would use Interfund borrowing to ensure that temporary disability insurance and family leave insurance benefits will be paid to eligible claimants. Under this proposal, the general fund would provide the loan, and the state disability benefits fund would pay interest on this loan to the general fund. I'm really confused about this. Why would interest be charged on this loan?
I would imagine that's standard practice for interfund transfers, which I think are a standard part of finance and accounting in the state.
Okay. Do you know what the interest rate will be?
I'll get back to you through this chair, but I presume it's a standard rate that is used for all kinds of interfund transfers in the state.
And again, this goes to the taxpayers of the state of New Jersey. Won't this interest just be passed along to the taxpayers and even further increase what is already the regressive employee wage tax?
Again, Senator, we follow the statute. Whatever is passed by this body and signed by the governor is what we do. And be very clear, I would look forward to having discussions with you and any of your colleagues about making any of our taxes more progressive.
Okay. So your department is taxed, Mr. Commissioner, with estimating the benefit payments and administrative costs for the State Disability Benefits Fund and setting the tax rate based on these estimates. I mean, to me, considering this is $1 billion difference here, it seems that there must have been a mistake somewhere. Can you please explain, and I know what you said already earlier, that this is based on by statute, but how can it go from 0 to $1 billion? Can you explain that?
I am not an accountant or an auditor, but I do trust in the many that work for me and work for your body. And again, I'm not trying to not have an answer. I can get you a more fulsome answer through the chair if you'd like, but I think it is pretty clearly laid out in the OLS preamble to that question. It was I don't want to use the word perfect storm. It's not perfect. It's not positive. But it was a combination of those 2 years. I mean, when you think about I don't know what's the word, like the uniqueness of having this fund that has supported our workforce in New Jersey on the TDI side for decades upon decades, on the family leave side for the past 15 years, and then the expansion in 2019 dictated that for 2 years we're going to use a different formula for how we predict the funds. And then on top of that, COVID hits, greatly changing the usage of the family, and also, by the way, greatly changing the number of folks paying in. So for 2 years, we had to use one formula for predicting what the fund was going to need, and then we had to go back to the old way. So you just imagine, even not being an expert in this subject, I'm not, that just leads to great disruptions, what we're seeing here today.
So an imperfect storm.
I'm going to use that term. Thank you,
Okay. Just, you have to footnote me the first 2 times you use it, then you own it. Okay? So, I mean, to me, that's a really poor estimate. When someone's off by $1 billion, that's a pretty poor estimate. What can be done to ensure that this won't happen again in the future?
Yeah, we look forward to working with this body on coming up with fixes, like I said earlier, to standardize and stabilize and make this a more predictable rate for employers and employees alike.
I can't imagine.
But until that point, we can only do what the statute says.
No, and I look forward to working with you, with your input, because I want to make sure that we're not here next year with an additional $1 billion or more that's being passed to the hardworking people of the state of New Jersey. You know, and I think of, a job that maybe someone like Chairman Sarlo does when they estimate the cost of a bridge. If it's $1 billion off, that's a big problem. So, I mean, here we are. That's a very large number. 2 years ago.
Hey, Senator, real quick, I'm sorry if I could just want to mention a couple things. One, I think it's very important to note on this specific issue, this specific fund, this is an investment in yourself and other workers. The money coming out of this fund is only obviously is used to pay out the benefits that the workers need. The whole point of the 2019 legislation was to expand the benefits. So we're thrilled that more people are using these benefits. As I mentioned earlier, I also just want to note that this rate, I know is going up a lot this year, is on par with other states that also have this benefit. The 25 other states that have family leave benefit, the rate this coming year is in the middle of the pack for those.
And again, I don't want to keep on harping on this topic, and I'm trying to be as nice as possible. I know in past years I've been a little more harsh, and I think it was just a heightened sense at that point in time. But, your department is actually tasked with estimating the benefit payments and administrative costs for the State Disability Benefits Fund and setting the tax rate based on those estimates. What happened?
I wish that we had the kind of flexibility you're alluding that we might have. Even though it might not be in statute, all of our estimations, all of our calculations are always done with standard accounting practices, as well as many accounting practices that are in OMB circulars and other rules from the state. So it's not like we're sitting there trying to come up with a number and making it fit. All of these estimates are done by standard accounting practices, as well as following the OMB circulars for how to come up with these numbers.
Okay. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, because it sounds like you're saying it wasn't anyone's incompetence that caused this. So it had to be something else. If it's something else, what was it exactly? If you can point to it.
Yeah, I mean, at the risk of repeating myself, I mean, I think it was just, I'll use an imperfect storm of circumstances that led to, again, 2 years of having to look backwards instead of forwards for those 2 years of calculations, as well as the great disparities in the funding during COVID.